Go to Proverbs chapter 10, if you would, please. Proverbs chapter 10 is where we're going to pick it up today. Great introduction here to the rest of the book. And you can clearly see that there's a switch, there's a change here in the approach. Proverbs chapter 1 through 9 go over the Proverbs to Solomon's son. And now he says, chapter 10, verse 1, the Proverbs of Solomon. So he's clearly starting a new section of the book. Now, there's a lot of debate over whether these are intended to be studied, like if they're actually grouped. And I just don't see that. I just have a real hard time grouping sections of almost any of these chapters together. Later on, chapter 29, chapter 30, there's obviously some groups. But even those are their own group. That group or set of verses is a hexastitch. Remember that? Or something like that. It's 2 or 3 or 4 verses, but it's clearly its own set of verses. And then the verses that are in the rest of the chapter are not related to it. So I don't believe that any of these chapters 10 through 30, are themed. They're just very random, this and that, because obviously if you study a friend, what kind of a friend should you have in Proverbs? You're going to be looking all over the place. There's not a section for that. So anyway, that's why it's good to do topical studies, and with the resources that we have today to be able to find these things. It's very simple and easy to do and exciting, fun to do. Okay, so we're going to go to chapter 10 here. Let me get caught up over there myself. Last time we met, we went over chapters 8 and 9. Remember, chapters 8 and 9 are very similar, right? Wisdom cries out her voice. Foolishness also cries out. Remember, foolishness kind of is repetitious. They try to repeat the successes of wisdom. So foolishness goes to the same places. They go out in the streets, high places, calling out for the fool to come. At least that's one of the pictures. So chapters 8 and 9 are very similar. Wisdom crying out for people to hear it. Now, chapter 10 is a transition chapter to the rest of the book, dealing with wisdom and foolishness. So I am going to mostly cover chapter 10, and then we're going to see, then we'll just touch on some of these other topics. Actually, no, I don't need that after all. So in chapter 10, we're going to start there in verse number 1, the Proverbs of Solomon. A wise son maketh a glad father, but a foolish son is the heaviness of his mother. And so there's a couple of natural divisions here in the chapter. The first thing we're going to look at is the wise son versus the foolish son. That's my first main point. The wise son and the foolish son. And so that's really the gist of the whole chapter, to be honest with you, is everything fits into wisdom or foolishness. And so this is obviously leading into the rest of the book. All right, let me see here real quick one thing. Yes. Let's point out some. Again, this chapter is different. We're not going to be able to go straight through it like we did all the other chapters. Let's point out some thoughts about wisdom and foolishness, the wise son and a foolish son. So first of all, let me point out that a child who chooses wisdom will, and then I'm going to answer that with about 7 answers. A child who chooses wisdom will do certain things, 7 things. Verse 1, a child who chooses wisdom will make a glad father. He'll make a glad father. It's too early to get into the foolish son, but can you think of how terrible it would be for your parents if you became a foolish person and chasing after women and after partying and so on? What would that do to your parents? I know what it'd do to my parents. But on the other hand, I know what it does for my parents, and I know all of you are still, well, no, you're not. You're the last one out of the house, right? And you're the first, and you're the first. So it's kind of too young to tell, but as all of you get older and all of your families leave the house, which is quite a few years away for you especially still, your parents become more and more happy, glad when their children are doing right. Right now, they're too much caught up in it. They're all caught up in just, the daily grind and keep getting your kids to do right and so on. But once they leave, then you step back and you say, wow, now are we glad that we went through that grind? So I know for my parents, it's very much that way, that they're very, very happy now for the struggles that they had and the things that they went through. Oh, a child who chooses wisdom will make his father happy. Secondly, a child who chooses wisdom will gather in the summer. Verse 5. He that gathereth in summer is a wise son. What's the point? Does it mean we all need to be farmers? He's prepared. He's preparing ahead. He gathereth in summer. So he's preparing ahead. This is a child who chooses wisdom. So I asked you, are you preparing ahead? You're preparing ahead. What are you going to be doing soon? What are you going to be doing this summer? What are you going to be doing next school year? What are you going to be, if you're in school? What are you going to be doing? Where is the Lord leading you next? A child who chooses wisdom will plan ahead. Third, a child who chooses wisdom, and I'm going to jump ahead to some other chapters now because this is that weird transition. Chapter 13, verse 1 says, a wise son heareth his father's instruction. A wise son hears his father's instruction. When you're still living with your parents, you don't value that instruction because you get it all the time. But trust me, when you leave home permanently, more and more so, you value your dad's instruction. And I have found that to be very, very true, and I love, most of the time, I love it. Most of the time. Fourth, chapter 15, verse 20 says, a wise son will make his father happy. Again, it's the same thing. Chapter 15, verse 20. A wise son maketh a glad father, but a foolish man, despiseth his mother. So here again we see that he make a glad father. Chapter 23, verse 15 says, the wise son will make his father's heart rejoice. You'll make your father's heart rejoice. So there's a thrill from within on a parent who is a wise son. So it answers that same question. Next, chapter 27, verse 11 says, a wise son makes his father's heart glad and enables him to give a good answer. Chapter 27, verse 11. Listen to this. My son, be wise and make my heart glad, that I may answer him that reproacheth me. Boy, that's pretty powerful. If someone reproaches a parent, if their children are wise, they have an easy answer. I've heard that, me and one of my brothers, we've talked about that a lot. Somebody that he didn't know their motives, and he kind of questioned their motives and intentions. And he said then, what are their children like? Honestly, this was a few years ago. He said, what are their children like? I said, look at them, they're great kids. They obey, they're well taught, they're smart, they think, they're just good kids. He said, well, if they have good kids, then I have nowhere to speak. When someone has good kids, even though it's unrelated to maybe the issue at hand, that's an unbelievable answer that their kids are doing right. They did good with their kids where it really mattered. The most important thing, they did right, and they did a good job. And so, enables your father, a wise son enables his father to give an answer. It's pretty good. Chapter 28, verse 7 then says, whoso keepeth the law is a wise son, whoso keepeth the law. So the wise son will keep the law, not run on the outside of the law. Okay, so those 7 things, a child who chooses wisdom will do these things. However, in chapter 10, a child who chooses foolishness will do other things. So let's go back to Proverbs chapter 10. Proverbs chapter 10, verse 1 now. But a foolish son is the heaviness of his mother. So let's point out a couple things. He'll be a grief to his father and bitterness to his mother. A child who chooses foolishness will be a grief to his father and bitterness to his mother. Chapter 10, verse 1 said that. Chapter 17, verse 25 also says that. A foolish son is a grief to his father and bitterness to her that bare him. Oh. Boy, you have your own children someday and you can't even imagine them off in sin, serving the devil and living a life apart from the Lord. Nothing but bitterness and grief. And we have people in our church here like that, whose children are serving the devil. And they can come to church, and I'm not belittling them in the slightest, but they come to church and they seem happy. But I guarantee you, every day, they think about their kids. And what a terrible thing that must be. So very much behooves us to strive for wise children. Next, a child who chooses foolishness will be a calamity to his father. Chapter 19, verse 13 says that the foolish son is a calamity to his father. 19:13. A foolish son is the calamity of his father, and the contentions of a wife are a continual dropping. But a foolish son is calamity. A foolish son also will waste his parents' provision. Chapter 19, verse 26. He that wasteth his father and chaseth away his mother is a son that causeth shame and bringeth reproach. There's no greater shame than when a child turns on their own parent. And you think of Absalom, as great of a blight as David and Bathsheba was. Of course, that's probably the beginning of what caused Absalom to be so rebellious. But as great of a blight as that was, it's at least as great or greater that his own son tried to steal the kingdom from him. And how terrible that must have been. So, foolish child. Wise child, foolish child. Let me give here also, and some of these are found in chapter 10, some of them are found throughout the rest of Proverbs. Let me give you some synonyms for being wise. Synonyms for being wise. I'm going to ask you for these, so make sure you're aware of these. Number 1, first of all, diligent. Diligent. Being diligent is a synonym for being wise. What's diligent?
Faithful at doing what you've been given to do.
Good. A faithful worker. How about this? A steady worker. A steady worker. That's exactly what I have. So be diligent. That's a wise son. Steady worker. Being just. Just. That's another synonym for being wise. What's just? It has to do with just being right and proper. What is right is just. Understanding is another synonym for being wise. Understanding. That word is often found in the book of Proverbs. Another synonym for being wise is the fear of the Lord. Understanding, by the way, is to grasp the significance of something. To grasp the significance. To understand what you're doing and what you're trying to accomplish. Understanding. Boy, you have a child who has understanding at a young age, man, they stand out. And then the fear of the Lord also is, of course, mentioned many times in the book of Proverbs. Those are some synonyms for being wise. Let me also give you some synonyms for being foolish. One the Bible uses here in Proverbs is wickedness. Wickedness. Wickedness is a synonym for foolishness. Another synonym is dealing with a slack hand. That's half-hearted effort. Half-hearted effort. If you're going to do something, do it all the way. Do it right. Half-heartedness, man, that stuff gets you in lots of trouble. And it's foolish. Another synonym for being foolish, sleeping when should be working. Sleeping instead of working. That's found in chapter 10 and other places as well. Foolishness. Sleeping instead of working. Bible uses one. I don't have a passage for any of these on this one, but the prating fool. Prating, P-R-A-T-I-N-G, or prating. What is that?
Proud and like flaunting
Maybe.
I just think it was a man who talks too much.
You're right. Yeah, that's exactly right. Their mouth just chatters endlessly, pointlessly. They just run. They just chatter. Another name that we have for that often is idle talk. Idle talk, just blabbering. Okay, so that's prating, and the Bible says it likens a fool to a person who prates, or who's a prating fool. Lots of talk, not much substance there at all. Another synonym for being foolish is being perverted. The word froward often is used for being foolish. Perverted. That's the meaning there. Another synonym for being foolish is deceitful in Proverbs. Deceitful. When Proverbs talks about winking with the eye. Now we know when I'm playing a trick on my kids, I might say something to my kids and then wink to my wife so she knows. What am I doing? I'm purposely being deceitful to the kids. So, or if I have a trick I'm playing on one of the kids, but I want Edmund to know that I'm playing a trick on Diana, so I'll say something and I'll wink at Edmund real quick. He that winketh, that's the deceitfulness. And in a literal sense, a fool is very deceitful. And the Proverbs talks about winking with the eyes and being deceitful. So those are synonyms for being wise and for being foolish. All right, let's look in chapter 10 again, if you haven't left there. Chapter 10, let me point out some other thoughts now about how to be wise. How to be wise, first of all. Let me give you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 ways from this chapter alone. How to be wise. 101. Here it is. Real simple. Keep it simple. Make your father happy by doing right. We already touched on this. A wise son maketh a glad father. You want to be wise? Make your father happy. Children should look to please their parents, especially when they're young. They just want to please their parents. Man, I've noticed my kids, they want, especially at a young age, they want to please their parents. They want me to be happy and my wife to be happy with their work. And so they want me to notice things. Did you see? I did, whatever. I got this. 0 every day. They want me to be happy. And of course, those are always good feelings when they run up to you. If they don't run up to you doing this, if they run up to you and they're like, what happened? How many did you get? Because they would tell me if they didn't have any demerits. Anyway, they want to make their father happy, and that's a wise thing to do. Secondly, how to be wise? Gather in the summer. I already touched on that one also. Verse number 5. Don't let opportunities pass you by. Plan ahead. Verse 8 tells us how to be wise. Receive commandments. Verse number 8. The wise in heart will receive commandments. but a prating fool shall fall. Receive commandments. Verse 13. In the lips of him that hath understanding, wisdom is found. But a rod is for the back of him that is void of understanding. So, in the lips of him that hath understanding, verse 13 tells us to have cautious and wise lips. That's how to be wise. Be cautious in what you say. We had a sign up in our bedroom that said, Dear Lord, if I can't say something nice today, make me keep my big mouth shut. And I've never forgotten that. Have cautious and wise lips. Now that's how you get wisdom. That's how you become wise. 14, verse 14. The wise men lay up knowledge. Lay up. What does lay up mean? Does that mean sleep high on the bunk bed? To store away, to gather up. A squirrel lays away its nuts. It stores things away. We should save money and store it away for a rainy day. Well, wise men lay up knowledge. Not like the guy that was preached about last night. He laid up knowledge his whole life, right? You weren't here. There's a guy, can help me out with this. He had 22 master's degrees. This guy, he's 70-something years old. All he's ever done is taken college classes. 30 degrees, 22 master's degrees, all kinds of crazy stuff. And he's always just worked a menial job. That's all he ever wanted to do. He wanted to work at McDonald's and get all of these degrees and store them away. So this isn't talking about just laying up knowledge for the sake of laying up knowledge. Lay up knowledge so that you can what? Use that knowledge. Wise men lay up knowledge. I like that. But the mouth of the foolish is near destruction. So lay up knowledge, store away knowledge. Doesn't mean you forget about it. Don't put so much there that you never can use it. But you should lay it up because you never know what you might need. Next, verse 19 tells us to refrain our lips if we're wise. In the multitude of words there wanteth not sin, but he that refraineth his lips is wise. You want to be wise? Learn to shut your mouth. Refrain your lips. Don't we all have a problem with that sometimes? Some of us are, I don't know, I think Dustin's kind of quiet, maybe even Trevor, maybe all of you, whatever. But we know that we all sometimes, somebody will say something, the thought comes in our head, and before we know it, blah, we say it. And we're like, oh my goodness, that was really dumb. I should have never said that. And I've gotten in trouble. I remember as a teenager a few times getting in trouble for things I didn't even know there's anything wrong with them. But it was idle. It was pointless. And I heard it and I said it. Dumb things to say. Refrain your lips. What's that saying about open and shout and remove all doubt? It's a rhyme. That's only the very last part of it. Anyway, the whole point of it is if you keep your mouth shut, people will think you're smart. But if you open your mouth and shout, you'll remove all doubt that you're not smart or that you're not wise. All right, and then lastly, speak the fruits of wisdom. Verse 20 says, the tongue of the just is as choice silver. There's another verse here. Verse 31, the mouth of the just bringeth forth wisdom. And the inference there is the idea of fruit. It brings forth. It bears wisdom, the mouth of the just. Verse 31. Speak the fruits of wisdom. That's how to be wise. Okay. Let's see here. Let me give you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different areas where there's profit in wickedness and righteousness. Profit in wickedness and righteousness. And I'm not saying there's profit in wickedness. What I'm getting at there is the results. Maybe I should retitle that. The results of wickedness and righteousness. And there's 6 areas that are mentioned here, at least 6 that are mentioned here in this chapter. And remember, we said that the verses seem very disconnected. I mean, there's just lots of different topics. Now, it's all related to wisdom and foolishness, but still, they're very different in their subject. And let me just mention 6 topics right off the bat here that are found in this chapter. In harvest, verses 3 through 5. The Lord will not suffer the soul of the righteous to famish, but he casteth away the substance of the wicked. So, the soul of the righteous will have plenty of harvest. The soul of the wicked, he'll cast away their substance. Their substance will be destroyed. Verse 4, he becometh poor that dealeth with a slack hand, but the hand of the diligent maketh rich. So you learn to work hard in your harvest. He that gathereth in summer is a wise son. So the point is, what are the results of wickedness and righteousness? One of the areas that's mentioned is in harvest. That if you're diligent and you're, what's the descriptions? The righteous, the diligent, and the prepared one, gathering in summer, those all give you good results. But the other side of the coin is related to harvest, is that the substance of the wicked is going to be cast away. You become poor if you deal with a slack hand. And if you sleep in the harvest time, you cause shame. So it's a contrast as related to the harvest. Wickedness or righteousness. Here's another issue. Verse 6, justice. We see wickedness and righteousness. Blessings are upon the head of the just, but violence covereth the mouth of the wicked. When it comes to justice, you're much better off being righteous. Verse 7 brings up the issue of how we're remembered, or our memory. Now, I don't mean my personal memory. I mean how we're remembered. What is the memory about you going to be? Well, the memory of the just is blessed, but the name of the wicked shall rot. And again, it goes back to what we've said before. As far as names, when you say a name, what is your thought? The name of the wicked shall rot. When I say Kennedy, I don't mean little Kennedy, but every time I even say the name Kennedy, I think, ooh, man, I'm glad I don't have that name. The name Kennedy, obviously, I wouldn't even want to be in the Kennedy family because you're probably going to die an early death. Probably run into a tree skiing or something like that, you know. The name of the wicked shall rot, but the memory of the just is blessed. How we're remembered. Well, wicked and righteous. How about this one? How we respond to commands. The righteous hear and obey. The foolish, the wicked, prates or prats against the commands. And that's found in verses 8 through 10. The righteous hear, the wise hear, receive commandments. But he that, the person who rebels, the wicked man, he's going to just talk about things instead of doing them. He's going to disobey and rebel. How about speech? Here's another topic. Speech. In speech, the wicked, they just run their mouth and they lead to destruction. They speak about sinful things. They slander people. Verse 18, he that uttereth a slander is a fool, and the multitude of words there wanteth not sin. The heart of the wicked is little worth. Fools die for want of wisdom. Those are all verses found in verses that talk about the mouth and the words that we use. Well, the righteous, they speak wisely. They hold their tongue. They only speak what needs to be said. They're not speaking out against people. I get so tired of hearing about the right to protest in our Constitution, which to the vast majority of people today, that's the right to riot. You can't tell me I can't say whatever I want. Our Constitution never says that. Well, spiritually speaking, we have no right to say whatever we want. We have a right as Christians to speak words that are uplifting and encouraging. We have right to speak wise words, wise counsel that we give to others. And if not, we hold our tongue. I think that's a great point. Lastly, another topic here as far as wickedness and righteousness found in the chapter is in our labor. If we labor like a wicked man, it'll be destroyed by poverty. But if we labor like a righteous man, it leads to investing, it leads to wealth. Literally says that, diligent, leading to wealth. The labor of the righteous, verse 16, tendeth to life. Verse 15, the rich man's wealth is his strong city, but the destruction of the poor is their poverty. So the wicked are going to be led to poverty, and the righteous are going to be led to strength, a place of strength and life. Okay, so this is a transition chapter, as you can tell. Lots of topical things, and basically it's a big comparison between the wise and the fool. And so we didn't even cover the whole chapter, but that's the way this transition takes place, and from this point on throughout the rest of Proverbs. As I mentioned, you'll see just many, many, many topics that are brought out. Great, great topics. Very wise of Solomon to include these in his Proverbs. Any questions? We got a tired bunch today. Any questions? Okay. I challenge you, I urge you to do some studies. How would you do a study? Now, this has already been done. Okay? But how would you do a study on a topic, any topic? I just looked down, a prudent man. How would you do a study on being prudent?
Start from if you're just doing Proverbs.
Proverbs only.
Look at the first time it's mentioned in Proverbs and all the other times and write it down and just read through those and study each verse individually, see how it applies in each verse.
Yeah. See if there's any context, which often in this case there's not much.
What the word actually means.
Okay, so how would you get that? A dictionary. So you have a good dictionary, a Bible concordance. You find out every time that it's listed out. You study that word alone. You try to organize them into thoughts. What's another very good thing to do with studying a word or a topic?
The original language.
Okay, that's true. Very true. Find somebody else who's written on it. Okay, find some commentary. That's how you study. That's how you take a topic, and there's hundreds of topics, I think, hundreds of topics in the book of Proverbs alone. And so, man, this would be great studies to do on your own. Yes?
I did a study on the righteous in Proverbs.
Mm-hmm.
And so every time I found it, there was a lot of times.
Sure.
For righteous use, I just wrote down the righteous is, and then according to this verse, the righteous is, blessed,
Mm-hmm.
or whatever it was. And there was I had over 50.
Wow.
I hadn't even gotten to halfway through the book yet. I still haven't finished it.
Huh.
Because
Yes.
I'm just going back to it every now and then. I'll write it down. But anyway, there was a ton. And it was just righteous is this, righteous, does that, or whatever the case is. And I've done that before, and that was really good.
Good. That's great. So that's how you do a study. I just think it's so important for us, because we get so caught up in so many things. What are you here for? We're here to study the Bible. And we're here to, as a teacher, I'm here to study the Bible. And the natural thing, we have to force ourselves, it seems, to study the Bible, to actually sit down with a concordance and a dictionary and a commentary and somebody else who wrote on the book of Proverbs and actually study things out. So I really challenge you to do that with the rest of Proverbs. I hope you don't feel like I'm gypping you because I'm not covering chapters 11 through 30. But we're standing on the edge of the ocean and we're looking in, And because that's what it is, at least Lake Michigan, you know. We're standing on the edge of this huge just wealth of information, and there's plenty of topics. And I also say, I think it's meant to be studied topically. It's meant to be. Most of the Bible is not that way. You understand what I mean? It's meant to be studied expositionally. But I really believe in this case, this section of Proverbs is meant to be studied topically. Yes?
I kind of notice that too, like if you just read through the Proverbs and without studying and just read through it, it's like, how does all this, correlate?
Yes. How does it fit together?
When you take time to study a topic, then
yes,
it's easier to apply it.
Yes, it brings it out. So it's meant to be studied topically, chapters 11, really chapter 10 even through chapter 30. Okay? All right, we'll stop there, and chapter 31 we'll pick up. And be prepared to explain in class also your dark saying.